In this lesson, we're going to be working with a variety of different layers and layer types. You should get started by downloading the Lesson 4 folder and double-click on the 04 Start Photoshop document. Now when you open this up, the Layers panel is going to be the most important thing that we have open. If you don't see the Layers panel off to the side over here, you can always go to Window and choose Layers to make sure it's opened up. We want to start by opening it up and scrolling down, and let's select the background layer. You can see that it is active, it's locked down, and we can be able to see it because of the eyeball icon that's next to it. Other layers that are turned off do not have the eyeball icon turned on. The first thing we want to do is to add a beach to our postcard, and since we want to add that above the background, we've got it selected. Let's go to File and Open and locate the Lesson 4 folder. Scroll down and there it is. And let's locate the Beach Photoshop document and say Open. In the Layers panel, I'm going to double-click Layer 1 and rename it Beach. Now to bring this document or photograph or layer into our working document, we have a couple of different options. One of the easiest things we can do is to simply drag it from one document to the other. In order to see both of the documents, let's put them two up side by side. First off, I'm going to make sure to close out my End Photoshop document, and all I have open is my Start document and my Beach Photoshop document. If you go to the Window drop-down menu, choose Arrange, and then choose Two Up Vertical. This will put two of them side by side. You can then use your Move tool, the double arrow, to click on the beach image and drag it and let go and drop it onto this area. Notice that when you do, the beach picture is behind the pineapple, so it's okay if it's being covered up, but it's above the layer, the background layer that we had selected before. Now that it's on here, we can safely go over to our Beach Photoshop document, close it out, and we don't have to save it to only have just our regular Start document open. Inside of our Layers panel, let's turn off visibility for our pineapple as well as for our background and make sure the beach layer is selected. To make this stand out as a postcard, let's do a little white border going around it. White borders can be added to a layer by using the layer styles. Go up to Layer, down to Layer Style, and choose Stroke. Think of stroke as being a line or an outline. With it selected and also checked on, do make sure Preview is turned on so that you get an idea of what it looks like while we make these edits. The size of it needs to be 5 pixels, going on the inside with normal blending mode, 100% opacity, but we're going to change the color of it to be just a solid white. From here we can say OK. And as we made those changes, you can now see that it has a little white border going around the inside of everything that's on this layer. Now let's go to our Layers panel. You can right-click or control-click on any of the visibility icons and tell it to show all of the layers. And this will turn visibility on for everything that's already in place. Oops, I do see that it's not showing my pineapple, so let's make sure that one's turned on as well. I do want to see my photograph, so I'm going to click on the beach layer and simply drag it up above so that it's between the flower and the pineapple layers. And I'm going to click on my little FX arrow to kind of bring it down so I can easily see everything. With this in place, the next thing we want to do is make this postage mark look a little more faded and worn. With the postage layer selected, let's drop the opacity of this down to be about 25%. You can use the slider or you could type in 25 right there. Next, let's turn off visibility for the Hawaii, flower, and beach and select your pineapple layer. This pineapple is looking a little bit dull, so we're going to duplicate it and change its blending mode. With this layer selected, you can control or right-click on that layer, tell it to duplicate the layer. This is going to make a copy of the pineapple. We'll say OK for it. And with a copy of the pineapple layer selected, change its blending mode from normal to overlay. You can see by changing blending modes, if you copy a layer, it will add a little bit more vividness to an overall design. The other thing you can do is to select your postage layer And to make it blend in and show up a little bit more, let's change its blending mode to multiply. Next, let's turn on visibility for the beach photo and make sure that layer is selected. We want to be able to scale and rotate this, and the best way to do that is to go to Edit and choose Free Transform. Command T is a good keyboard shortcut to know. This gives you the ability to both scale and rotate and do any kind of transformation you need without having to select a specific tool. From here, I'm going to click on the edge of it and scale it down. And as I'm scaling, I'm paying attention to the percentage that's up here for both the height and the width. Because they're linked together, both of these will be the same number. In other words, they'll be scaling proportionally. And I want to scale it down to be about 50%. Right about there. If yours is off by a little bit, that's okay. But height and width are now 50%. And let's rotate it to be about 15 degrees. So clicking just outside the edge of it. And again, I'm looking at my cursor as I click and drag. Or I'm looking up here at the top to see the angle that I'm working from. To commit to the transformation, click the little checkbox at the top. Let's turn on the flower. And using our black arrow move tool, let's tuck it right underneath the flower with a corner edge peeking out right there. Now let's go back down and choose our background layer and make a new layer above it, and we'll double click to rename it Clouds. With this new transparent layer selected, we'll use a filter in order to create it. Now this particular filter requires you to have two colors set for your foreground and background colors. Find both of those at the bottom of your toolbox. If you click on the foreground color, this will allow you to pick a color that's going to be sky blue. The book gives you an RGB value of 48 for R, 138 for G, and 174 for B. If yours is off by a little bit or you want to do a different color, I'm okay with that. Let's also make sure our background color is set to white. So with it selected, and make sure background color is selected, we've got it set to here. So foreground being sky blue, background being white. Now we can go up to the filter drop-down menu. We're going to choose to render. Oh, there it is here. And we're going to render some clouds. They may be a little bit hard to see, but you can see some realistic cloud-like texture that's been added to that blank canvas. Now let's select the pineapple copy too, and we want to bring on another flower that was given to us in our lesson folders. In order to do this, we're going to drag it from our lesson folder into Photoshop. Now, you may need to rearrange how your computer screen is set up, but basically we need to be able to see both Photoshop and whatever folder that your flower is stored into, whatever working folder that you've got. So notice now I've got both of these side by side, and I did it by just clicking the edge of Photoshop and dragging it over. Now I can select the Flower 2 Photoshop document and drag it into here and drop it. You can see that it's placed above the pineapple copy layer. And I'm going to drag this back over so I can see Photoshop a little bit better. There we go. And now I can drag that flower layer down here to the very bottom. Since I'm bringing it in and it's placing it, I need to commit to any transformation that I've got by clicking up here at the very top. I'm going to use my move tool and even nudge it down just a bit more, so right about there. That looks good. Now let's go to our Hawaii layer and activate it so we can see it. We want to add some text below the word Hawaii, so I'm going to deselect all of my layers by going up to going up to Select and down to Deselect Layers. Notice that nothing is now selected in my Layers panel. To add text, locate your horizontal type tool. I'm going to carefully zoom in, so Command and the plus sign to make it a little bit bigger to see. And I'm going to put my insertion point right here underneath Hawaii. Now you can see the last time I added text, it's going off to the left-hand side, so I'm going to swap it over to the left. The font that the book recommends is Birch, B-I-R-C. Now I don't have Birch STD as my setup, So you can actually use any font that you want. If you don't have the font that the computer is working with, simply find one that works well and fits within your design. For me, I kind of like Apex. I think Apex will work for what I'm trying to do. With the text still selected, I'm going to type out the word Island Paradise. Also, with it still selected, I can go up to the very top, choose an appropriate size or setting for it. It really doesn't matter since you're not using the same one. The size of your font is going to be a little bit different. Let's see what 36 looks like. That's pretty good to fill out the area, maybe a little bit larger. Also, I'm going to change the font color of this to be kind of a grassy green, so something that shows up nicely. Some other things I need to do is to space my letters out. I like the size of that, but I want to add some more spacing in between it. So with all my text still selected, I'm going to open up my character panel or go to the properties panel. Inside the properties panel, you can see all the different properties for your font selected. What we want to increase is the tracking. The tracking should be just large enough to spread the letters out so that the letter E on Paradise reaches the end of Hawaii. Also, while we're here, we need to make sure everything is all caps. If necessary, you can click on the More Information. You can see it drops down. And then when I scroll down, under Type Options, make sure the double uppercase T's are selected. This will keep all of your letters in uppercase. Finally, with everything looking good, we can choose our black arrow move tool, and let's move it down below the word Hawaii so that there's plenty of space between the two. Now, one thing I want to point out, because we added type to the layer, it has its own special layer that has a T on it. The Hawaii text does not have that T. In other words, it's text, it's type, but it's not editable type. All of the pixels that are on this layer are completely pixelated. There is no vector text data that we can work with. Let's take advantage of these pixels by adding a gradient on top of the letters for Hawaii so that it stands out. I want you to carefully right-click or control-click on the thumbnail for the Hawaii layer and tell it to select the pixels. You can see now I've got a marquee going around all the area that has pixels for that layer. To set up our gradient, let's choose the Gradient tool. If you don't see it, it may be hiding underneath your paint bucket. With that one selected, make sure we're using the regular gradient tool, that we have a linear gradient selected, and if you click on the down arrow, we can open up the basics and choose this first gradient option. Now notice that it's going from the foreground color to the background color. Right now it's set to blue to white. If we want to change this, we can change our foreground color by double clicking on it, and let's set it to be something kind of a bright yellow. Make mine a little bit more orange. That looks good. And say OK. Because it's going from foreground to white now, that's the color that we have selected. Now when I click from the top to the bottom, you can see how it creates the gradient effect. In this case, it starts off with the foreground color at the top and ends with the foreground color at the bottom. If you ever wanted to swap it up, you can click on the edges of your little gradient slider and be able to swap it around this way. The other thing it does is it creates a gradient fill layer, and notice that because we had the letters already selected or the pixels selected for the Hawaii layer, it creates what's known as a layer mask to mask off that area. Layer masks like these allow you to quickly and easily undo and redo or make changes to whatever you've done without actually destroying the original pixels. So this is a great way of non-destructively editing your design. I'm going to hit Command-0 to back out. This is a great point, if you haven't done so already, to go up to File and let's do a Save As to save your work. This time it's going to be called 04 Working, and make sure to add your name to it and say Save.